Go ahead and get started. And as I was explaining a couple of minutes ago, we'll do the PowerPoint here. First, I've got a handout set. I've got some other resources to introduce, and we'll get it up and going. So my name is Bruce Hunter. I'm the interim college counseling director here. Began Jan 1. My assignment continues through the end of the school year at the end of May, and then I will pass the baton to the person to be named, who will be the permanent college counseling director, starting sometime in the summer. So this is what I've been doing after many years in college admissions and college advising over a number of years. I've been doing interims like this for the last 7 years, and it's been absolutely fascinating, and I very much enjoy this work. So here's who I am. Here we are. This is tonight. Let's get the next one. Okay, agenda for tonight's meeting: intro to Hilton Head Prep College Counseling Processing Program. Best I can figure, at least how I'm going to run it for the next 4 months. Outline of how and when I'll meet with Hilton Head Prep juniors and parents. Defining roles and resources and responsibilities, introducing resources. We'll briefly discuss campus visits, some reminders throughout the college process, financial aid and scholarships. Anytime you see in any of my communications C/U, that means college/university. So I usually, when I use that expression, I try to use college university or colleges universities earlier in the sentence, and then hopefully so you see the CU reference. And then, of course, leave time for questions and answers after we get to the handout packet. So I see this process, and I think very much in early conversation with Mr. Morgan, I think the school has historically seen this as very much of a student-centered, fit-focused process. And Best College Fit is an organization that produces some materials that you'll see one of them tonight, and there'll be other materials down the road. But I love that the name Best College Fit clearly fits within this notion of this process, at least as Hilton Head Prep, and many schools see it. So my view is that students learn and grow and mature and gain skills and perspective as they step up and accept responsibility and little by little begin to take charge of this process. And parents provide incredibly invaluable personal, emotional, and logistical and financial and all sorts of other support. And I, and speaking on behalf of the school, highly value relationship with parents. I also see that the college university planning and admission process complements the academic curriculum, helps teach and hone important research, and critical reading, and analytical, and writing, and personal reflections, and other skills. And more specifically, as students develop those skills through the process, college counselor, parents, faculty, others can help students grow and mature and take responsibility by expecting students to reflect on their personal strengths and qualities, their defining experiences. For some of you, that may have involved a recent or not so recent move to this area and move to this school, or combining the academic with an athletic commitment. But very often, early in this process, I will ask students to sort of connect back to what do I need or want from my college university experience? What are my must-haves? What are my would-be-nice ifs? I think it's reasonable for us to expect students to register on their own for the ACT and the SAT, and take each test once before fall of senior year. I think you'll hear my approach in a few minutes about students scheduling personal and family meetings and attending both group and individual meetings, and students communicating with college and university admission reps. With parent help, I think it's also quite reasonable for students to accept some responsibility for helping plan and coordinate college visits and tours. I'll point something out on a handout about that later on. And meeting deadlines. For test registrations, for requesting teacher recs, for turning in different assignments that I'll ask students to take on. So who's responsible for what? So students are expected to take the lead and drive the process with lots of support and encouragement from parents, fellow counselors, and others. Students responsible for scheduling meetings with me, updating in ambiance, and keeping their parents involved and in the loop so that there isn't the need for lots of duplication of effort. SAT and ACT registrations, ambiance, and other assignments, reading and replying to emails, later requesting teacher recs. Again, all of this reasonable expectations, I think, parsed out over time for students. Again, parents are providing incredibly valuable perspective, insights, context, organization, personal and emotional and financial and logistical support, and of course regular. What's my role as the interim college advisor? Well, I'm connecting as frequently as I can, starting this week with group meetings with juniors, and this kind of a meeting, and individual meetings, obviously, with you and your students to follow. But my responsibility or my role to connect, to help guide the process, to answer questions, to represent Hilton Head to college and university admission officers, and network with my counterparts at other schools. My responsibility, my role, to gather information from and about students and parents, help begin to construct and develop college lists, and lay the foundation for a smooth transition over the summer to the to-be-named new director of college counseling, who, Mr. Organ and I have discussed this a little bit, who will write the school recommendation with a lot of input and help from me and perhaps from you and your students as well. And will next fall electronically submit transcripts and school and teacher recs when students apply, your students apply next fall as seniors at HHPrep. Again, my role to communicate with regular reminders to students and parents, including information and updates as we go. As college counselors, and I speak for my counterparts and colleagues across the country, we see ourselves partly as essay helpers and partly as insurance agents. Are any of you in the insurance business? Okay, I'm not going to be stepping on any toes then. I'm not here to sell anybody any insurance. But, we'll skip to this one, I think it's really important as I'm beginning to work with students and parents through this process that we have on a list of prospective colleges and universities a range of places by admission difficulty. And, including, one of my colleagues used to, in fact it was Gary Ripple, from whom I learned the expression, a sleep at night school, right? For a lifetime. And then with English teachers, and I have 2 degrees in English, frequently we work with our faculty colleagues and others as we approach the second half of the year and through the fall to have students brainstorm college essay question ideas, develop ideas and approaches, review drafts, help students tell their story through the applications and essays through the process. How and when the process gets underway? Juniors will attend junior group meetings with me starting middle to the end of this week. We'll probably have to do a few catch-up meetings to catch everybody, get the schedules into early next week. Juniors will schedule with me and figure out with you, coordinate with you, what's a logical time to get together for us to sit down and start to take the group meetings, which will continue monthly with juniors through May, to start to sort of whittle that down and hone in on some specific kinds of questions, reflections, preferred qualities and characteristics, testing plans, and so forth. I will help students, and you and your student will help develop a preliminary list of colleges and universities to consider. And then with your student. We'll maintain and add suggestions to in Naviance what's called colleges I'm thinking about. And then students will meet several more times with me before the end of the school year. Some of those will be in those monthly group settings. Others will be when they happen to swing by during lunch or before school or after school, as a number of seniors have already begun to do here in the month that I've been here. And then students will continue their college and university research with the FISC guide and some of the other resources I'll introduce in a few minutes. And we'll visit college campuses when possible, and certainly will communicate with college and university admission officers to say to them, as college folks, I'm here. I'm a member of the class of 24 at HHPrep, and I've heard about your school. I've known about it for years. Maybe my parents went there. Maybe my college counselor just told me about it. But here I am. Let's start a conversation. College admission officers welcome that. Oh my gosh. Especially at middle-sized to smaller colleges and universities. You may have seen in the blast that I sent out announcing this meeting several weeks ago that I included a reference to the Forbes 2023 Top College Admission Resources. And that was published here just a couple of weeks ago. And I have some of those resources here this evening. This PowerPoint will be emailed to you along with, I think, the recording of what we're talking about and doing right now, and with a set of the handout packet. So you need not sort of rush to note any of this down. But some of the resources that are here, I have, and I will just very briefly kind of hold them up and show you what they look like. And then if after the program you want to come and paw over them a little bit, I'm happy to have you do so. Oops, what happened to that? There we go. So colleges that changed lives. That's what this book is. This is a gentleman who was a huge figure in our field, passed away several years ago, and he identifies a group of smaller liberal arts colleges across the country that he identifies as really kind of life-changing places. You've heard of many, you haven't heard of some, but what an absolutely wonderful concept, and that Lauren Pope book is just great. The FISC Guide to Colleges has been around for a very, very long time. It's been updated annually for almost 40 years. It started its life as the New York Times Selective Guide to Colleges. I don't think the Times wanted their name on the book much longer than the first year that their education editor published it. But it's a great resource, and it's a subjective narrative. Truth About College Admission. This is fantastic. I just love this book. And if you were going to go out and think about purchasing or borrowing or finding a used copy somewhere, this is it as far as I'm concerned. And I just love the family guide to getting in and staying together concept. And there's also a workbook that goes with this now. So there's a whole slew of exercises and discussion points that the authors include. Where you go is not who you'll be, an antidote to the college admission mania. This is fantastic. This is another New York Times author, and that book's been out for 6 years now. But oh my gosh, it's still just magnificent. I've seen here at the school, I've seen a number of copies of Who Gets In and Apply, a year inside college admission. Jeff Salingo. Again, these are all from this Forbes Top College Admission Resources of 2023. This group. These are all websites. Big Future, College Navigator. Unplugged would like to control this computer using accessibility features. Guess I'm supposed to deny that? Okay. All right. So there we are. So these are websites that you may or may not want to take a look at or find helpful. Big Futures from College Board, College Express, quite useful. Fair Test is probably the most updated roster of colleges that are test optional or are test flexible or are test blind is the latest phrase now, including the University of California. So those are all websites, and then these are blogs and podcasts. There's a wonderful blog from Georgia Tech. Typically, the director of admission writes that blog. I found one recently from a young woman in the admission office who wrote the blog, and I'm going to distribute that to seniors here later this week. But Tulane has one. There are other college universities that do blogs, podcasts from some of these resources, as you can see. So these are great resources, and you know, I recommend them. In the spring and summer of 2023, I definitely encourage you and your students to get on some college campuses and in their communities, and particularly during the spring and summer months. One of the things I first noticed when I looked at the school calendar, here's an entire week in March, and then here's another entire week in April. Oh my gosh! You know, maybe you have other commitments, maybe you aren't going to rent your house out during Heritage Week, but oh my gosh, what a built-in, you know, opportunity to get out and visit some campuses and really kind of kick the tires and get a sense of are these places or are these communities where our students is excited and where we would want to ask some other questions as well. Most visits will include a campus tour and an admission presentation. Very few visits these days will include a personal interview or meetings with faculty. You know, there may be exceptions to that, but for the most part, when a student hops on a website for a college and says, okay, let's find days and times that we can visit, usually one of the questions is not going to be, would you like to meet with a faculty member in your area of interest? You know, again, it may happen down the road. With parents and maybe other family or other guests who may be on the tour, what's a date that's going to work? Usually there's a space on the website to register and reserve space. What's the feel of each campus and community? You know, students, in my experience, can set foot on a campus and walk around for as little as 20 minutes and come to a conclusion that says, these are my people, or these are not my people. You know, this is a place where I can see myself, or oh my gosh, do we have to stay for the tour? You know, and that's the fun, to me, of this process. Something to think about. Be resourceful. I'm always one to, when I visit a college campus, if I see someone walking his or her dog on that campus, first of all, I love dogs, so I stop and meet every dog in the world. But after I meet the dog, then I want to meet who the owner of that dog is. Sometimes it's a professor. Sometimes it's the president of the college. Sometimes it's a neighbor. Sometimes it's somebody who runs a business, you know, around the block or down the way. Oh my gosh, there's an incredible resource right there to ask someone, what's your take on this place? How has it changed over the 20 years that you lived across the street? You know, what's your impression of the students who attend here? You know, do they help out in the community? You know, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's really important not to visit only the reaches or the uber selective places, or to be swayed by the weather or the tour guide or other factors. Right? Research each of these places that you might visit in either the FISC guide or some number of others that you might see. I happen to open here to Chapman University in Orange, California. Here's a nice little narrative about Chapman. If you're going to be in Southern Cal and you want to see a mid-sized private university with some great undergraduate programs, including film, oh my gosh, there's Chapman, and there's a whole narrative you can read and then beforehand, and then compare that to your visit experience. Ask questions, know your impressions, take photos, reflect, follow up. Again, your student may want to post, or you may want to post some of that on social media. You know, all sorts of possibilities. Financial aid and scholarships. This is a one-panel, one-slide presentation, and obviously there is much more to this than you see here. We have talked about perhaps bringing a financial aid and scholarship professional from the college university level
to speak here later on this spring. But I'll make just several points here in these 6 bullets. First of all, most financial aid is based on demonstrated need, and that's identified from the FAFSA, F-A-F-S-A, free application for federal student aid, and, or, in most cases, it'll be and at highly selective and most costly places. Every college will use, just about every college will use the FAFSA. A smaller handful will additionally use the CSS profile. CSS stands for College Scholarship Service. That's part of the College Board empire. And students and parents both have a role in completing FAFSA and CSS profile. Every college and university anywhere in the U.S. awards need-based aid, but not all will meet the full need of the student and family. So keep that in mind. Deadlines vary for the FAFSA and the CSS profile, but they both get underway in the fall of senior year. Scholarships. Anytime I use the word scholarship, I use the $ for the S, just to keep us on track and make sure we know what we're talking about. So scholarships at many colleges are based on talent, merit, skill, background, arts, athletic, diversity, leadership, other personal qualities and factors. But as you move up the ladder of selectivity to the most highly selective colleges in the country, they're making their financial aid strictly on the basis of need. So if you're in touch with, or your son or daughter is in touch with someone who says, "Oh yeah, I'm talking to these 4 Ivy League coaches, and I'm gonna get a full scholarship to play tennis at 3 of them." No, it's not gonna happen. There isn't an Ivy League college in the country that has ever given an athletic scholarship. They may well have offered a substantial need-based package, but there are no athletic scholarships at Ivy League colleges. And they have so many incredibly strong students applying every year, and who they admit that if they started giving merit aid, where would they start? And where would they stop? Because it's those places are that selective with just about everybody at the very, very top of everything. And then deadlines, of course, vary for scholarship applications and considerations. How many applications on your student's final list? Again, this is sketching it way, way in advance. My suggestion, my recommendation is, this ought to be a reasonable number, somewhere in the 8 to 12 band. I'm working with several seniors this year who, by whatever reason or reasoning, decided to apply to double that number. And they're having a really hard time keeping track of everything. Gee, surprise, surprise. and I'm going back with an awful lot of these seniors and saying, okay, let's look at Naviance. Where did you not apply? Oh, Mr. Hunt, I didn't apply to that one, or that one, or that one, or this one, or that one. Yeah, good for you. Okay, you whittled it down to a logical, reasonable number, and in most cases, you stratified your list. You applied to a range of colleges in terms of admission difficulty. So maybe you had a far reach, what I call an unlikely, on your list, or maybe you had a couple here. And then you had a couple of reaches, maybe as many as 3. Then if you think in terms of a bell-shaped curve, the belly of the bell was your possible target group, where your academic profile and the college's academic profile pretty darn close. You're right on profile, as the expression is. Then maybe you identified, sure as heck hope you identified at least 1 or 2 in the likely category. And then maybe you identified at least one financial likely. A place where, if finances are going to be important, or an important factor, here's a place where, yes, your student stands a really good chance of being admitted, but also stands a really good chance of the family affording it. Whether or not the need-based or merit-based scholarship comes through as you might have hoped. So a total of somewhere between 8 and 12. I use 12 as my top because I get really uncomfortable whenever the number of colleges where a student is going to apply, whenever that number ends in the word teen. So 12 is my cut. 13? No, we're getting into teen. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. You know, now we're really getting beyond, in my view, kind of what that ought to be. And to me, this ought to be a thoughtful, discerning, reflecting process. And so the more students take a scattershot approach and apply to double that number, you know, the less thoughtful, the less discerning, and the less reflective that is. Many will apply, I would suggest, to fewer than that number of colleges, but few should apply to many more. All right, student reminders throughout the process. Again, take charge, complete your own test reg, communicate regularly with parents and the college counselor, tell your story in applications and essays and meetings and interviews, meet or beat college and university and school deadlines, don't expect exceptions. Be respectful, be formal, be resourceful in your communication with college and university reps. Embody values of honor and integrity and self-discipline and autonomy. Don't expect, and this is students and parents, you'll see it on the next slide for parents, don't expect everything to happen at lightning speed. Even in this electronic age, not everything's going to happen with the snap of a finger. Be patient, be thoughtful, be reflective, be transparent. Student reminders. Parent reminders, much the same. Help your student take responsibility for much of what we're discussing. I think it's really important, and this is one of the points made in the Truth About College Admission book, great advice. Try not to make every conversation every night around the dinner table about college. Maybe schedule 1 hour a week and invite your student to save up all of their questions, and you guys save all of your questions to that particular time. So it's Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock, except on Super Bowl Sunday, you know, or it's whatever day or time you choose as a family. But save up those questions and don't make every conversation always about college. I mean, you know, I have the word college in my title, so it's difficult for me not to have every conversation about college. But I'm also not the parent of a HHPrep junior. This is absolutely crucial, this third bullet. Have the money conversation about college and university costs sooner than later. And I'm not asking you to have your students sit down and look over the entire family budget by any stretch. But what I am suggesting is that you have a very honest and a very candid and a very frank conversation with your student about what kinds of family resources there are to help afford college moving forward. If it's going to be important for your student to apply to colleges that offer merit-based aid, or if it's going to be important for your family to sit down and complete the FAFSA, and if applying to schools that want the profile, then it's really important for you and your student to have that conversation up front. And here's what happens in my experience. It's happened a dozen times in different schools. Spring of senior year, it's April. The May 1 National College Decision Day is coming. 2 weeks in advance, student comes in and says, hey, thanks, Mr. Hunter. I've updated my records. Here's all the places where I've been admitted. I'm really happy with all these choices. And then the next step is, but my parents tell me we can't afford any of them. Oh my gosh. Couldn't we have avoided this conversation by having that conversation with your parents a year out? Or 9 months out? And so I will be prompting your students to begin that conversation, and I'm prompting you to begin that conversation. But the sooner in this process you can be on the same page with your student about what the financial limits or resources. Maybe there's a college fund that Grandma and Grandpa have been contributing to for many years. Wonderful. You know, maybe it's important to stay in the state of South Carolina, where as a South Carolina resident, your student clearly is gonna get a price break and family room. So that's just crucial. We talked about that. Again, for parents, support, encourage, remind, add perspective, expect and help your student to take charge of his or her process. I will offer one last thought and to entertain some questions and answers, and then we'll go to the handout packet. So on that last topic of encourage your student to kind of step up and take charge. The first year that I was ever doing college advising in an independent school was Little Wayland Academy in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. Small boarding school, small town, Wisconsin. And I started in July, so I had a chance to kind of get to know everybody. I didn't come in mid-year and have to kind of, race to catch up as here. But as I began working with seniors, there was one young man in particular. His name was Nathan Mono. I remember it vividly. And every time I turned to Nathan, or tried to engage him in any kind of conversation about anything related to his college search, he gave me the exact same stock reply. And he said, "Mr. Hunter, whatever my mother decides is fine with me." Oh my gosh, my heart sank. And it became incredibly clear that Nathan saw the path of least resistance. He just abdicated every aspect of his entire process to say, "Okay, Mom, take it on." She did his applications, she wrote his essays, she chose his colleges. Heck, when he went off, I can't remember wherever he went. She, maybe she moved him into the dorm. Maybe she chose his courses. I don't know where it ended. But I thankfully have not heard since, "Mr. Hunter, whatever my mother or father decides is fine with me." So I share that with you. That's a whole bunch of info in one gulp. Let me entertain some questions, and then we'll turn to the handouts. Yes, ma'am.
What is Naviance?
Great question. Naviance is one of several competing platforms out there that schools like HHPrep subscribe to. Each student, and I think parents, I'm not sure if that's happened here yet, get an account, and you can log in, and it's a cornucopia of resources and points of contact to the entire college university process. Paul, do you want to speak a little bit more to Naviance?
Sure. So this is something that the school brought in, I don't know how many years ago, but it is a great one-stop shop for researching colleges, your students' information, testing information, GPA, things like that will be in there. It's inside of a password protected thing for you. It can be viewed by our college counselors. Over the next 6 months or so, we are assessing whether or not we continue with Naviance or go on to something. There's a couple others right now that are pretty popular. One is called My Thing, and it's essentially the next generation. And I guess this would be a decent time to speak to the process that we're going through. We're going to be hiring a full-time replacement. I felt it was really important when Ms. McHugh decided she had to go back to New Jersey for personal reasons, that rather than sort of piece this thing together until the spring, until we got someone, finding somebody like Bruce, who'd been an interim at different places, knows the drill, who's going to take really good care of your kids, finishing the seniors off, and then, getting their juniors off to a good start. So you're in good hands with this. Bruce is a person that I've known about for a long time. I've got a lot of friends. I call all the people that I trust from when I was in college admissions, advising. I was like, "What do you know about Bruce Hunter?" "Oh, can you get him?" I said, "Yeah, I think we can get him." So he's here. Right now where we are, we have posted it. We've got about 25 different applicants for the position. We posted it nationally. We have 2 people coming to campus next week, having a full interview with students and parents, and a whole bunch of different people. We're putting together that schedule now. There's a few more people that we're Zooming with. That's all a long way of saying person who gets the job is going to make the final decision about whether we should switch to My Own Learning, stay with Naviance, or look at one of the other platforms. Any questions about that process we're going through?
I don't have a question about the process, but it's not like a college app. Does it say anything?
No, it's for high school students.
Okay.
And it's essentially a depository for the work that your son or daughter is doing with building a list. So you can research colleges. If you like it, let's say you like Villanova, you can say, all right, colleges I'm considering. That was something that Bruce pointed out. So then you generate like a list. And from that list, you can decide as you go along, well, you know, I visited and I didn't like it.
Okay.
Or my father went there, so I would never go there. Well, it's like a working place to kind of keep you organized.
They're already using that here?
Yes, that's been in use here at HHPrep for a number of years. I think juniors were signed on to Naviance and got their accounts sometime in the last 6 months or so. Because I've spending lots of time with seniors, but as I've gone in and taken a look at juniors, you know, we can see, interestingly, on Naviance
When the student's last visit to Naviance was, whether it was just to add a college or report a decision or whatever. And so often I'll ask a student, gee, when were you last on Naviance? Oh, I spent all weekend on it last weekend, Mr. Hunter. Well, not exactly. It's been 6 months since you were on Naviance. So when students want to say, oh yeah, I spent a whole bunch of time researching colleges on Naviance last weekend, not so much. Maybe you used another resource, but
One of the nice tools that I think people will enjoy, and all this stuff sort of will translate over to any change in the platform, is you can actually get sort of national data on schools, but you can also look at Hilton Head Prep students and how they have done at a particular college based on like a scattergram line. So for example, let's say we've had 40 kids apply to Clemson University in the last 5 years. And obviously it changes a little bit every year, but you can say, all right, my student has this GPA and these are his test scores. Everyone with his GPA and test scores for the last 5 years has gotten in. So that would tell you, when he starts talking about your likely lists and your reaches, and like how do you determine that, right? And there's some schools that are always a reach. If you want to go to Stanford, do everything. It's still, the numbers would indicate that you shouldn't depend on that because they only accept single-digit percentages of the applicants. And most of the kids that apply think they're going to get in, right? So that it's a pretty strong thing. But it doesn't mean you won't get in. But then when you look at those scattergrams, it can also give you an idea, well, this is a reach because nobody with my grades and scores from here has ever been admitted for that. So unless I'm being recruited to be the quarterback at Clemson, maybe it will be, that could move the needle. So there's certain things
And that's going to be big news if a quarterback from Hilton Head Prep is going to be recruited at Clemson.
going.
That's really big news, right?
I hope we have that guy, but there's mitigating factors.
In the meantime, our coaches are trying to recruit that kid to come to Hilton Head Prep, right?
Sure.
Yeah, there you go.
And the bottom line is, like, there are different factors that will impact these things. And they impact them differently in different schools. We have a lot of athletes here. That's a different process for a lot of people. In that case, you're competing against, well, first of all, does the coach want that student athlete to be part of their team? And then, has their admissions office given them certain parameters within which they can recruit? They might say, look, our average SAT here is a 1300. Don't bring me a kid with under an 11. Then the coach is like, all right, I know what my parameters are. This kid's really good. How about a 1050? Well, right? What positions does she play or something like that? So there's a lot, and that's all part of why what people like Bruce do, and what we are. I mean, I'm really excited to be honest with you about the people that we have applying for this job. I was hopeful that we were going to get a first-class, national class pool of applicants. And I tell you, there are people that aren't even going to get invited to campus. It would be phenomenal. That's how good the pool is right now, so I'm excited. Because this process, there's a lot of the sort of macro advice that you get. But at the end of the day, it's a very individualized process. There are no two kids in the school that are alike, and there's no two processes that will be alike. There's no two families that have the exact same financial situation. And there are good resources to assess whether or not a school is important to you, right? So there's something that you might have mentioned that it's called a net price calculator.
Thank you.
The net price calculator.
That's a phrase worth writing down. It doesn't come out.
You don't have to put your name, your social security number, you know how much you make, you know what your finances are. And it'll give you sort of like a mock application for financial aid. And it'll say, look, it'll give you what's called an expected family contribution, EFC. Some of you do it for here with the SSS form. And if that thing spits out a number that says, you can afford $1 million for college, well, you're not going to get financial aid for a need base. But if it says you can afford 30, so you may not get that at Hilton HHPrep. Maybe you applied for 8 here and you didn't qualify. But our tuition is $23,000. But the tuition at Colgate is pushing 80. And what you realize is that some of these really well-endowed schools that are looking to get kids from all different backgrounds to come, they're going to meet that need up to 100%. Some of the places like Davidson University, they'll meet you 100% with no loan financial aid packages. And if your expected family contributions $25,000, it's going to be cheaper for you to go for a place like that than it's going to be to go to your state university if you can get in, right? And that's the road. And that's where you sort of kind of assess. You want to go to the University of Richmond? It's going to be cheaper than Clemson in many cases. Because even for families that don't qualify for aid here, because that line is a much different line in terms of affordability. The other side of these things, and I'm not trying to jump in, but
Please do.
talking
Thank you.
college counseling, for me, it's like wading into warm water. I love it. And it's the best job in prep schools, in my opinion. Not this one, it's that one. Because you get to be an advocate for kids all day long. You get to work with families. It's a lot like coaching, right? You get a new team every year. You have some outcomes. You're trying to win. You're also trying to sort of help the kids develop those skills and hopefully learn a lot through the process. You'll notice we call it college counseling, not college placement. We can find a college for all the kids. I think there was a time where, a kid walked in, some guy with a tweed jacket would look at a kid and say, you look like Princeton material. He'd write it down and the kid would apply. Well, it doesn't work that way anymore. Things have changed. We've got so much more data to work with. Remember this too, the colleges that we went to don't exist anymore. They're way nicer, right? They're nicer, they're more expensive, they're harder to get into. Most of us, don't be offended by this, most of us couldn't get into the college we went to if we applied today. So these kids are dealing with a much different set of circumstances. So it's especially with my background, it's extremely important to me that we're doing this as well as anybody in the country. And that's what we're kind of going for, that's what we're looking for your kids. Because when you're a new head of school, and the paint's not even dry in your house yet, and you get a call, I'm at home, and I was at Lowe's, and Tina called. And I'm just getting a note, Tina, says, I got some bad news. So I'm like, what's going on? Like either the school's on fire, or the college counselor's moving to Virginia, right? And it was better than the college counselor. So I've been thinking a lot about this, and I've been thinking a lot about you. Parents of juniors, it's stressful. Because this is also a time that, you're going to be we're all going to go through this together. We've worked hard, we put our kids through a great school, we provide them these opportunities, and suddenly things that we used to have control over get sort of taken out of our control because of so many of these different factors that really have nothing to do with our kid, but they've got to do with institutional priorities, the different schools. If they decide they want more kids from the South at Holy Cross in Massachusetts, well, you're in luck. If the southern schools are suddenly getting flooded with kids from the Northeast, which they are, then suddenly their process is going to change. So it's our job to be the experts in these things as it's a moving target. It's a dynamic field. It changes. It's our college counselor's job to travel and to interface with the different folks at the colleges, and just stay on top of it. Because you've been doing this job, I won't ask you how many years, but the job that you're doing right now is not the same job you did 20 years ago.
That is correct.
And it's changed.
And I have more gray hair now.
At least you're happy. So anyhow, if there's ever any questions as you go through, if there's other folks that aren't here tonight that want to kind of talk, you know, there's got to be pretty real-time talk about this, because we have 2 people coming next week. Hopefully they both knock it out of the park, and we have a really difficult decision of who's it going to be. And if we have any indecision, we might bring more people, because it's a pretty great pool. Anyways. Sorry to like.
Thank you. No problem at all. Let me take this moment to ask if you, when you came in, if you did not sign in, do me a favor and sign out, just so that we have note of that you were here this evening. Take a quick glance, if you would, at the handout packet. And I'm going to blast through this, stopping a couple of different places, and happy to answer questions along the way. And of course, I'll be happy to hang out here after the program ends and answer further questions as we go. So this is this Best College Fit that I was telling you about early on. Best College Fit has since been acquired by SCORE, which is one of the other competing platforms to Naviance and BioLearning and CAlpha and a bunch of other platforms out there. But this is one of several of the pages in this packet that I'm going to lead with in conversation with your students in the group meetings later this week and next. So these college planning tips, obviously we're barely in January. When your students see them later this week, we'll be in February. But these are some of the suggestions, which I like very, very much. And I've known and worked with Mr. Van Busker for a number of years. Student-centered, asking some important why questions. Resist the temptation to start with a list of destination or target colleges. Rather, take a step back and think, what am I looking for as a student? What are the qualities and characteristics that are really important to me? You know, let's not start with a college and then ask, does it fit me? Let's rather think in terms of, what are my needs? What are my qualifications? What are my preferences? And then let's go and find some colleges that will offer that to the degree that I want as a student. Keep rankings and reputations in perspective. I'll just give you a quick heads up that the last page in this packet is my op-ed from the Sarasota Herald-Tribune that trashes the U.S. News rankings, which are complete garbage. So happy to discuss that any further if you like. But where Mr. Van Busker says keep the rankings and reputations in perspective, particularly on the ranking side, I say completely ignore them and move on. Yes.
You always understand that in this process, you're trying to get advice, figure out who the experts are. Well, when I first got into college counseling, I went to the Harvard summer program for college admissions, and it's one of those things, it's very nice, you have sessions all day, but at some point at the end of the evening, you're sitting on a bar stool next to some of the other folks that, you know, are presenting at the conference, and I find myself sitting next to the Dean of Admissions, Princeton, and Hargadon, remember him?
Absolutely.
So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I'm young, and I'm new to the field, and I'm hanging on his every word. Like he's going to, it's like Yoda, right? He's going to tell me everything I need to know, and then I'm going to be an expert. And he says, let me tell you about rankings. He says, you know, and everyone's listening to him, it's all shown. He says, you know, the U.S. News and World Report, it's really helpful, and it's great for starting fires in the winter. So, that was my introduction to it.
I love it.
You've been there, remember it.
I knew Fred well. He is no longer with us, but that very much sounds like him. So I love it. Focus on fit. These are 4 elements of fit. You'll see another page later in this packet that takes a slightly different approach. Hierarchy of importance. Again, what's especially important? What are the must-haves? What are the would-be nice-ifs? Road trip. We talked about that. Don't rush to judgment. Don't think that somehow your student needs to create a final list of colleges by the end of their junior year. Heck no. Have some ideas, let the list grow, could do some continued research, and if by Halloween your student still has 26 colleges on the list, okay, now that's a different issue. But, you know, my gosh, the time for a final list is 9 months from now, I would argue. Get on colleges' radar screens. This is students connecting with college and university admission folks. Number 9, talk with your parents about cost and affordability. Sound familiar? A little bit more background on that than one.
Bruce, can I just?
Yes, yes.
I'm sorry, I'm late. 8. Did you already talk about that? Like, why did they ask me, does your student want to get credit for being here?
Great question. Thank you so much. And in fact, I just had this conversation in the last couple of days with several seniors. Many colleges, not the most highly selectives, but many colleges take into account in their admission process the level of interest that the student shows in them. Okay? So, as you move up the ladder of selectivity, they could care less. They know that everyone in the world loves them. That's why they're getting 40,000 applications a year and they're admitting 3% of everything. You move and you're looking at magnificent colleges and universities that aren't quite as selective as the Ubers, as I call them, or the unlikelies. Those are colleges that want students who want to be there. I was just talking with a young man today, senior, who has finally agreed to add several likelies to his list. And I said, okay, are you working on those applications? Yeah, but I'm waiting to hear from these 3 or 4 other places that I'm really much more interested in. I said, time out. You need, if that's a Feb 15 deadline or a March 1 deadline, you need to hop on that now. Because the longer you wait to apply, the more the college is going to sniff out that you're not very interested. And they may factor that into their admission decision. Yes, you're right on profile for that school. Yes, you stand a great chance to be admitted if you show some interest and if you engage in the process. But if you apply at the 11th hour and you decline the invitation for an interview with a local alone, and you really kind of, you know, are arrogant about the whole thing and say, oh, well, no, I'd go to your school only if I didn't get into here or there or there. Well, guess what? They're going to sniff that out, and rather than admitting you, they're probably going to waitlist you. And then where are you? You thought that was going to be your likely. You know? So depending on the college, and you know, I can have these kinds of specific individual conversations down the line with students and with parents. But depending on the college, they, you know, there are a lot of colleges out there that want, show me some love.
Do they ever give a fee waiver if you've taken a tour? Is that part of the
Usually not. Usually the fee waivers are typically set aside for students from families for whom paying that $50, $75, $100 fee is going to represent a financial hardship. In athletics, from time to time, coaches will get a certain number of fee waivers for the recruits that they're working with. So that'll happen more frequently than everybody in today's presentation. Hey, you know, you get a fee waiver, and you get a fee waiver, and you get a fee waiver. Yeah.
One thing you think about, this is something that has evolved with the automation of applications, the number of applicants that colleges that the average kid nationally applies to. It's easier to apply to more colleges now. So if you think about the job of the college admissions office, their job is to admit a class. So let's say they need a 2,500 student freshman class because they get 2,500 bids and they accommodate that. So they don't want to go over that number because now they're going to be sleeping on the couch in the dean's office. They don't want to be under that because now they're going to be fired because they're not meeting their tuition, their net tuition requirements. They're trying to be as selective as they possibly can be for the rankings. Because, we make fun of the rankings, but the rankings matter to a lot of people. They matter to the development office because it's good for their development office to be able to say, we moved up 10 spots in the rankings. Right? They
As soon as they tell that to me, I say, if you're leading with that, if that's the best case you can make, I'm going to recommend to my students and parents who read it in my op-ed. If that's the best case you can make, I'm going to recommend to my students and parents they drop your college from the list. That's the best case you can make. Come on.
So at the end of the day, it's become increasingly difficult for them to predict which of these great kids is actually going to show up on my campus. And that's where that perceived interest, I think it's true. I don't think Stanford, I think they're pretty sure if they admit you, you're probably going to come. But it doesn't, we're not talking too far down the ladder. Places that are highly selective, they offer, and you'll learn all about this, early decision. Nothing says I love you like early decision, because it's essentially you're making a contract. If you take me, I will go. So what's the yield on that? 100%. 99, some kid joins band. But at the end of the day, that's the only college you can go to. So more and more colleges, especially in that just below, we're not talking, that tiny little thread at the top, but outstanding places that you know are going to be selected. That's where you really want to go. Letting them know that this is really where I want to be. Now, that especially if you're looking at, I once had a highly selective college dean from up in New York look at me when I was in Virginia Beach and say, you got a kid from Virginia Beach that comes early decision, that kid needs to be in the team photo and we'll take him. As opposed to all the kids from that area just crawling all over each other. Because you know what they don't get in those places? They don't get kids from Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. If you're from North Dakota, I think you're good everywhere, right? But,
that was my experience in Salt Lake City. I used to say to my students and parents in Salt Lake City, you will enjoy a modest geographic advantage if you apply to colleges east or midwest of here. You're not going to get any benefit in California because there are plenty of Utah kids looking to go 2 states away in California.
If you apply regular decision to one of those schools,
Yep.
they're like,
Yep.
we've seen this guy before.
That's right.
He applies, he gets in, he doesn't come. In Virginia, it used to be, well, they applied, they get in, they went to William and Mary.
Yeah.
Half the cost, it's a great place, why would they come up here? But the kids that had that perceived interest, and some of it doesn't have to be early decision, they'll ask questions. Sure. Yeah, so my daughter goes to Elon University. My friend Barry Bradbury, who's been in the admissions game forever, I'm sure you know him. He would look at it. Has the kid visited? When we visited the campus, we probably come by and fill out a card and say, hey, thanks for coming to Hilton Head Island. I'm interested in Notre Dame. That's one of the people I came to school. Now they have the card. Did you, like as you said, when did you apply? So they can start putting together a little puzzle saying, this kid's pretty interesting. Like if we admit this kid, they might come, because not every school even has early decision. Right? So anyways, that's...
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay. Quickly, let me zip to 10 and 11 and move on to some of these others. 10 says develop a strategy for testing. This is as much as I'm going to say about testing this evening. You have a great resource here in Dr. Wallace. There are dozens of schools where I have worked and consulted and done interims who would be thrilled to have someone like Dr. Wallace here on campus working individually with your students. But my suggestion to juniors is take each of the ACT and SAT, take each of them once, sometime between now and next fall. Then compare those results side by side, perhaps with the help of Dr. Wallace, determine which is your stronger, and then if you want to retake one of them, whichever is your stronger. And do that once in the fall, and then keep moving forward with everything else that's a whole lot more important. Make good choices, kind of good, solid, basic advice. The upper school director of my former school in Salt Lake, before every dance or social event, that was his mantra to students about making good choices. I used to quote him when we would use this. This is a calendar that you now have, and will give to your students as well, of events and dates and deadlines and opportunities coming up from now until the end of July. So you'll see here that there are dates noted as deadlines for registering for SAT or for ACT with a little bit of explanation on each one. Okay? You'll notice also that for spring break, both spring break and the Heritage Week, I've included there. Get out, and this is a good opportunity to add or include some college visits with whatever travel your family may have already planned. Or maybe one of your students' friends' parents are going on a college tour and your kid's interested and have them tag along, whatever that might be. And you'll see each of the months, February, March, April, May. You'll see junior group meetings. You'll see June and July, students continue college university research, communicate with admission officers, continue working on math, essays, etc., all of which will introduce students over time through the fall. The flip side of that page is just a different way of looking at a junior month-by-month timeline. Again, pretty much just February through May. This page, this top 12 strengths and experiences colleges look for in high school students, this may be everything you already know, but maybe we haven't discussed. I love this piece because it reinforces everything that we say to students very frequently. Number one, rigorous high school curriculum challenges the student, maybe some APs. 2, grades that represent a strong effort and upward trend, slightly lower grades in rigorous program, preferred to all A's and less challenging coursework. 3, solid scores on SAT or ACT consistent with performance, if the college still wants to see the scores at all. And there are many that don't. Well-written essay provides insight into students' personality, values, goals, etc. Passionate involvement with few inter out school commitments and activities. Leadership and initiative. All the rest. What didn't you see in the first 6 on this page? GPA. Over here on grades, it didn't say GPA. It said grades that represent a strong effort and an upward trend. And perhaps reflect rigor of curriculum. So it isn't as much about GPA as everyone in the world wants to think it is. What's the pattern of grades and the rigor of curriculum and the engagement this student's showing intellectually beyond just academically? And it's sure GPA is a factor of that, but on the whole, first 6 on this page, no mention GPA. Then personal characteristics, demonstrated intellectual curiosity. Here's the answer to your question again. Number 9, demonstrated enthusiasm to attend. Often exhibited by campus visit. Interviews are less and less prominent these days, showing interest toward attending the college and cooperative admission. Again, at some places where that's important. Letters of rep, special talents, out-of-school experiences. This next page, Education Conservancy. This organization is no longer in business. I love the guy who started it. He was sort of Don Quixote, tilting against windmills of the commercialization of this college admission process for a number of years. Finally just sort of said, hey, I gave it my best and I'm done. But these are some wonderful principles and student and parent guidelines. I checked this afternoon. The last thing that Lloyd did, I think, when he closed the organization was he left one page on the website. So if you go to Education Conservancy, there it is. But these are wonderful guidelines that, again, I think will reinforce some of what we've discussed this evening. Allow your students to take responsibility, resist relying on rankings, listen to, encourage, believe in your student. Do not use the term we, as in we are applying to, or we are taking the SAT, or we are writing an essay. I'll give you, we're planning to visit some colleges. Okay, that works. We're discussing college stuff at 4 o'clock every Sunday afternoon. Great. But when what is clearly the student responsibility of writing essays and completing applications and taking the ACT, then, I'll tell you this. In conversation, I'll call you on that. I'll be diplomatic about it. But if you say, yeah, we're taking the SAT, I may call you on that. Flip side of that page is from a wonderful little book, Bill Mayer, College of Mission Mystique, kind of an annotated timeline of the year ahead. You may have some fun with that. This is back to fit. Here's a 4-way fit that are questions to ask yourself, students, along with parent help, when you're thinking about fit. This happens to be the academic set of questions, but you see at the bottom of the page and on the flip side, here are other elements of fit. Academic, with library and class size and curriculum and majors and reputation. Here's the financial, cost, financial aid, work study, grants. Here's the physical of the campus size, setting, housing, climate, transportation. Here's the social, religion, diversity, athletics, campus life. And again, your student and you will determine which of these are particularly important and which are maybe further down the list. This middle page I like very, very much. You will see if you turn to the back side of it, Mr. Claggett is no longer the Dean of Admission at Middlebury. This is from about 10 years ago, to be honest with you. But oh my gosh, I'm a huge believer in the idea that good process is good process. Whether it was, I mean, heck, I have handouts I've given to seniors that appeared in the New York Times, 6, 8, a dozen years ago. Because I haven't seen anything better since. And the process of wait lists and deferrals hasn't changed in a dozen years. It's great advice. Good process is good process. Mr. Cleggett's top 10 list of things parents should remember about the process. Mr. Morgan mentioned this a few minutes ago. Remember that this process is not about you. Students need to make their own decisions and observations. Support and encouragement. Allowing students to seek out.
To your students' application process.
Help them prepare, let them perform. Encourage your students to make their own college appointments, phone calls, emails, etc. This is his great example in number 6. When a family arrives at a college admission office, it's important that the student step up and approach the front desk. If mom or dad do the stepping up and they're dragging the kid behind them, that's a message. That says something. It's not gonna, they're gonna kick you out of the conference space or not let you be on the tour. But kind of be aware.
There's something to that. I mean, I've visited hundreds of colleges and one of the tours. I had $1 for every time, mom's dressed to the nines, and dad's wearing a $2,000 suit. I'm watching the kid looks like beats. Walking up behind him. I'm thinking to myself, they probably want mom or dad doing it. We need to. That's one of the things. You don't have to, wear a tuxedo, but I think that's the kind of thing we want our kids to go out. And when a prep kid shows up, a lot of the schools they know are school. They know that they're all different, but they're getting some common, sort of skills. And so that's great advice. And when you go and visit, you will laugh because you will now not be able to unsee what I have just planted over there.
Number 4 I like very much. Prepare your student for disappointment. For many students, this process is the first time they can face bad news. Remind them that there's no perfect college and that admission decisions do not reflect their worth as people or your worth as parents. Boy, take that one to heart. Take that one to heart. I'm a firm believer that any student who has made their way through an entire career at Hilton Head Prep, or maybe came to Hilton Head Prep along the way, and has never gotten anything below an A, better it happen here before he or she moves on to college and is shattered by the idea that, oh my gosh, I'm no longer a straight A student. Well, guess what? you're not always going to be a straight A student in everything. You're not going to achieve perfection in everything always forever. So the sooner, even in this process, that there's some kind of knocking down and getting up, my gosh, what a great life lesson and opportunity. I like number 3, never complete any portion of the college application for your students. And number 2, we spoke to before, very, very important, I think. Don't let stereotypes or outdated information steer your student away from schools in which they would otherwise have an interest. Times have changed, so have colleges. And then Bob's number 1, I think, is kind of fun. On a college visit, never buy a t-shirt or sweatshirt in your size. Kind of fun. Then the flip of that is from the same year he put that out, we as college counselors at schools, we get news updates from colleges very frequently. So this happened to be the one from Middlebury that summer. And he goes on ahead, and this is pretty standard. We were up in applications. That year, Middlebury admitted 19%. They're now admitting about 14%. So, it's been several years, but, this is all very, very common. But then he goes on, and in this middle paragraph, which I've circled, he highlights the extent to which a psychology professor at Middlebury had done extensive research on how this process itself can prepare students for the independence that they will experience in college. High correlation between students taking a more independent role in the college search process and their academic performance. Very interesting. I don't know if they've updated that since or if Professor Huffer is still there, but what a really interesting, but when I read this, I thought, wow, way to go, Bob, that's super. And then this next to last paragraph concerned an increasing number of end of senior year transcripts that we've seen that show serious decline. We're way too early for me to having this conversation with you, but I'll have this exact same conversation with seniors later on this spring. And in the years that I worked in Salt Lake City, I must have, about every 4 years, I had a student who was admitted somewhere in the early round and then chose not to do any work in the whole second semester. And despite dozens of warnings, usually I going right to that kid's face and saying, look, if you don't turn this around in a hurry, Johns Hopkins is going to yank the rug right the heck out from under you. Oh, no, they won't do it, Mr. Hunter. Well, guess what? That's exactly what they did. So as your student goes through this process and successfully completes junior year and has a great experience and gets a great start in senior year and earns great grades in the fall semester of senior year, if they're admitted somewhere in December of senior year and then they choose not to lift a finger for the next 5 months, colleges are going to figure that out and they're going to withdraw or rescind the offer of admission. And I've seen it happen. Then the last page is the one I told you about. My opinion: don't take the best colleges rankings seriously. Again, if you want to have a longer conversation about that, I'd be happy to. But I can go for forever building on Fred Hagedorn's best use of the rankings is as kindling for the fire. That's what I have. If you want to pull, this book right here, just to tell you about it. It wasn't part of the set that was recommended by Forbes magazine, but I know this author pretty well. He's given us a nice deal, and I am going to, in the group meetings this week and next, I'm going to give each of your students a copy of this book to keep. It's all sorts of great info, some worksheets, some fact finders about college, stuff about merit scholarships and financial aid, factors like admission difficulty and vocation and academic offerings, and how you spent the last couple of summers, and here's a knowing yourself survey and profile. And there's even a section here, I think, specifically for parents. So have some, you will see this book around your house. They didn't steal it from the library. It's their own personal copy, and we'll use it fairly regularly in the group meetings that I'll do with juniors here later on this spring. So, thank you all for coming.